Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome from wherever you are joining today. My name is Susan, and I am joined by the amazing Dexibit founder, Angie Judge. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, everybody.
Today, we are going to be talking about analyzing weather alongside key metrics such as visitation and revenue. But to begin with, I'm going to take you through a quick introduction to Dexibit for anyone that may be new here. Then we'll dive in to talk about the weather. So if you're new to Dexibit, we do data analytics specifically for visitor attractions. This is for both cultural organizations and commercial attractions. Our mission is to democratize data, and we do that by bringing together all sorts of data from around the visitor's experience and your venue's operations. So things like footfall, ticketing, CRM, point of sale, e-commerce, social web, weather, and so much more. I will share my screen now to show you what that looks like in the product. So here is Dexibit. It is software as a service, so you can invite as many users as you'd like, and you can build dashboards, reports, insights, and forecasts, which you can then turn into scheduled email reports at a click of a button. In Dexibit, we have an extensive library of visualizations. To add one to your dashboard, you can simply search for the topic you're looking for and click Add to add it in. And this is an example dashboard, so you can see lots of data coming together in different ways from different data sources to get everything from very high-level data right down through to the very detailed data. And this includes weather data. So I'll hand it over to Angie now, and maybe you can get us started with telling us a bit more about where the weather data comes from.
Cool. Thanks, Susan. And funny, we always talk about the weather. Today, we're really going to do that. So in Dexibit, our weather data comes from a vendor called Aries, and we actually buy that data in, and it's a standard part of our subscription. So everybody gets weather via Dexibit from Aries. Some customers might have their own weather systems, and if that were the case, we could take in that data additionally, but that's our default standard for everyone. And we use it for analysis, for looking at sort of to what degree is visitation responding to weather, or is weather responsible for changes. And then we also use it for forecasting, predominantly in that short range forecasting window, so the 7 to 14 day window. It's not necessarily a feature used for all customers, because for some locations it's not as important as for others, but definitely for outdoor locations like zoos and parks, weather is obviously a really, really important part of that. So I will share my screen now, and out of interest, we have actually just upgraded or brought our weather into our new data experience. So we'll have a look at what that looks like today and all of the cool things that you can do with it. So if you're working with weather to start off with in your library, you'll find, if you search for weather, a whole bunch of visualizations in the library, and I'm going to show you a couple of those here today. So for a start, this is a really fun way to look at weather, which is to separate out sort of average temperature over the course of each day, and to look at the primary data or primary weather condition for this for each day. This is a really useful view if you're doing sort of week in review, last 7 days, or week in advance, sort of next 7 days. And you're sort of just considering each individual day, either for planning or reporting purposes, to see what that looks like. And if we open up our toolbox on the right-hand side here, and we hop into the data studio here we can see, I could change the name of this visualization. What are we last? We could call this last month's weather. I know we're not in February at the moment. And I can also look at all of the different attributes of this data too. So you can see there's quite a lot of data attributes available for me to look at. Right now I'm looking at my temperature, and of course, because we've got customers in different parts of the world, we've got both Fahrenheit and Celsius here, and the same for things like visibility and wind gusts. We've got both metric systems there to switch between. And I might choose, if I'm looking at, in this case, the average temperature, I might sort of look at whether I want to look at the average temperature over the day, or I might want to look at sort of the max temperature as well, if that were important to me. So I've got different attributes that I can pull depending on what's interesting to me when I'm looking at these feeds. And next here is a weather feed visualization. So this is taking exactly the same data. It's just really prescribing it in a different way. So this is a list style visualization as opposed to categorical. So you'll see that showing up here. And this is a really great way to just have a feed again on any dashboard or report where you're sort of looking at individual days. And here I've got the opportunity to add in a little bit more data as well. So you can see here I've gone for that temperature again. And I've gone for this rain cloud emoji here, which was describing weather conditions. I've gone to have that sort of explained in more detail with the weather condition and the weather description. Plus, I've got the opportunity to add in a few more attributes here, like the precipitation rate and the wind gust, average wind gust, for example, here, just to give an idea of the broader weather conditions. So those are two visualizations that are quite useful for when you're wanting to narrow down onto each individual day of weather and sort of look at what those conditions were like. The other sort of role that weather data is useful for is to think about sort of long-term attribution to changing weather conditions. So an example of when you do that is if you're looking at sort of last month's performance and you're trying to work out we were more than or less than this time last year, and to what degree are changing weather conditions responsible for that. So one of the ways that you can do that is by looking at a year-on-year comparison, counting sort of the days by the type of condition. So for example, here, I'm looking at the month of January across 2023 and 2024. And I'm asking my data to group by my weather condition and then group by my year. So I can see sort of the number of days in each weather condition. And you can see some, just at sort of first glance, some big differences here between January last year and January this year. For example, I've got far more cloudy days last year than I did this year. And I've got far more hazy days this year than I did last year, and a few more sunny days this year than I did last year. So when you're sort of looking at this month last year, this month this year, and you're trying to work out whether, did we have a ton more sunny days or a ton less rainy days, and that's influenced visitation year-on-year growth, this is a really good start to have a quick look at that. And of course, you could do that with sort of average rainfall or wind speed or temperatures or anything like that. And you can also sort of use weather on a scatter plot against visitation, for example, or per cap spending or anything like that, to see to what degree is there a correlation or relationship between the two. Here, just for demonstration purposes, I've put actually two weather conditions side by side with each other, my temperature and my rainfall, to see to what degree there's a relationship between those. But generally speaking, on scatter plots, if you've got a relationship between your two variables, an uphill slope will indicate a positive relationship, a downhill slope will indicate a negative relationship, like we kind of have here. It's a little bit hard to infer. And the tighter the cluster, which you're not seeing a particularly tight cluster here, the tighter the cluster around that curve, sort of the stronger the relationship is. And when you're looking at a scatter plot, you'd describe things as mild, moderate, or strong in their relationship. And this one is kind of fun, a much, much simpler way of looking at things, which is an emoji word cloud. So this is kind of fun. So this is a word cloud visualization, again, using that weather data. And it's just really useful for that sort of very quick glance. What is my predominant weather conditions going to be? So the emojis that are bigger and more central to the word cloud will be the ones with more days of weather conditions behind them, and the emojis that are smaller and less predominant in the word cloud are the days or the types of weather with less counts of days to them. So this is a really nice kind of pulse of weather when you're sort of thinking about what was the predominant weather condition of that week or of that month or whatever that looks like. And then lastly, just for a little bit of fun, if anybody has a climate change interest, this is some of the kind of analysis that you could do. Where this could be really interesting is where we're looking at sort of long-term visitation changes that to some degree may be attributable to weather conditions, particularly in outdoor locations. So for example, if we were worried about long-term changes in rainfall in an outdoor park, for example, we might want to sort of dig into weather data to this degree. This could also be useful for things like comparing with other data sets outside the standard ones that we look at. So it might be something like energy consumption and to understand the relationship between heat or air conditioning energy use and temperature. So here we're looking at, and this is actually real data for a city in the world. Here we're looking at the changes. Our orange line here is 2024, and then our green line here is 2023 last year, and then we've got our blue line here being 2022. And I've summarized this data up. Let's have a look based on the weeks. So we could also sort of look at things on days or months as well, and just to sort of see how that temperature is moving. Let's look at this by the month name and see what that looks like. Here we go. So we can see actually here in this particular city that 2024 is about on par and maybe a little bit cooler so far than 2022, which is kind of interesting. But this would be a fun thing to look at for your city and see what those changing weather conditions are like, particularly when it comes into some of those other things like rainfall that are going to have quite an impact on visitation. So that's all I brought along today, Susan. I thought that would be a fun little look at weather. And this is a really useful thing for solving what can be quite a manual problem for a lot of visitor attractions. So a lot of visitor attractions that we talk to for the first time, people are writing down the weather condition in their book, and then they're sort of writing it manually into a spreadsheet as part of their notes. And then that data is then kind of lost for all time. So this just takes something that can be quite an administrative burden for visitor services when they're thinking about reflecting on their numbers, and just turn it into something that's automated, really efficient and useful, but also kind of fun to work with.
Thank you, Angie. Really great to see what insights we can pull to analyze the weather.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for having me today, Susan, and to everybody out there, wishing you a happy 4th of July.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.